And I have the honor of introducing this year's iTalent host and MC, someone who I have met and known for a while now. He's a good friend and probably the first person I torture in email anytime I have a question about technology. And he still continues to answer me, so I'm going to still continue to torture you, Matt. But Matt Charney is the executive editor for Recruiting Daily, the world's largest content destination and social network dedicated to recruiting and HR. If you haven't visited recruitingdaily.com or recruitingblogs.com, you're missing out. He has a really cool career, so I want to tell you just a little bit about it. He started his career as an in-house recruiter for companies like Warner Brothers. Another one you may have heard of, Walt Disney Company, where he built the first social recruiting and online employer branding programs. He led sourcing strategy and built an in-house search function. He's also worked in the RPO industry, so he's got practitioner and outsourcing experience, as well as has led marketing functions at HR technology companies like Monster and Cornerstone On Demand. He was recognized as an HRO Today Superstar Analyst in 2014 and 2015, and named a 2015 HR Trendsetter for Innovation. He is a top influencer by publications such as the Huffington Post, HR Examiner, and Forbes. His personal blog, Snark Attack, was one of 20 selected by WordPress as a must-read recommended business blog. He serves on the advisory board for numerous companies and is a graduate of the School of Cinema Television at the University of Southern California. And the last really cool thing I need to tell you about Matt is he's currently developing a major motion picture with 20th Century Fox. It is a pleasure to have my friend Matt involved in our forum and this year's iTalent. Please join me in welcoming Matt Charney.
I need to shorten my bio, apparently, so thank you for... Well, no, yeah, thank you for sitting through that. So this is a really, really exciting part of this year, of HRO. Always my favorite part. I just kind of want to give you a sense. I'm sure everyone here is sick and tired of hearing about how recruiting is broken, right? Like, one of the cool things, though, is that there are technologies proliferating all over the place that are actually fixing it and aren't just sitting around talking about it, right? Just to kind of give you a lay of the land, in 2014, this was through the third quarter, $429 million in new venture capital went exclusively to funding HR or recruiting specific startups. This year, it is projected to be $600 to $700 million. So you have a huge amount of growth in people who are actually investing in solving these problems. This year actually got started off with a bang. Glassdoor raised a $70 million round, and they finished last in last year's competition. So that should tell you something about the caliber of entrants here. So basically, one of the parts of my job that I think is really interesting is I get to talk to vendors all day long, as I'm sure you do, only I have to actually return their phone calls. And what you hear is a very different pitch than the one you would probably hear as a practitioner or an integration partner. And that pitch is basically positioning the company as a business, not as a product. So we want to take the opportunity to let you hear from some of the most innovative companies out there what it sounds like to be on the other side of that and be pitched to as if you were going to invest in a company as opposed to buy their product. So it's a little bit differentiated. So let me explain to you how this works. Today, we have opened the HRO Today Fund. Now, the HRO Today Fund, each of the judges have been given 150,000 shares to invest in these companies, in this portfolio. The rules are this: they must invest all of their shares, and they may not invest equally. So none of this, 25,000 to everyone just to make them happy, right? So they got to do that. Another 25,000 shares will be allotted to the winner of the audience survey on Bizbo, so you have a chance to vote. I would ask you to please wait until the end, because obviously you can't allocate your shares before knowing everyone. And the people whose valuation are the highest will be the winner. And as a result of winning, they will get some face time with some of the best influencers in the industry. They'll get featured stories in both Recruiting Daily, HRO Today, and they will get fully integrated marketing campaigns with both Recruiting Daily and HRO Today as a nice bonus to help jumpstart their business. So with that in mind, I would like to introduce the judges, starting with Mr. Michael Bagelman, last year's winner with Jobberate. I think that worked out well for you. Mir Ali, who is the VP of Global Technology Solutions at FutureStep. And Elaine Orler, who is the chairwoman, I guess, I'm sorry, of the Talent Board. I'm in an HR room that's like, this is a bad mistake, right? Bill Borman, who is, just as of Monday, has joined me as the Managing Director of Innovation and Technology at Recruiting Daily. And finally, Mr. Bill Phillip is actually an investor for Delancey Street Partners. So with that, we will welcome our very first entrant. All entrants have 7 minutes. Their mics get cut off in the end. So next time you get called by a vendor who wants to pitch a product, remember, you don't need to schedule an hour. Hopefully it can be done in 7 minutes. So with that in mind, I would like to bring on Ivan Casanova, Vice President of Marketing for Jibe.
Ivan Casanova. I run marketing and product for a talent acquisition software company called Jibe. We are based in New York City, and many people may know Jibe as a company that invented technology that allows people to apply for jobs, no matter how complicated that job application might be, on their mobile phones. And this is a technology that we brought out a couple of years ago. And this year, we're going to host like 3 or 3.5 million online job applications through mobile for 50 or 60 of the biggest companies in the world. But that's not what I'm here to talk to you about, okay? What I'm here to talk to you all about today is how Jibe is going to transform the way that brands engage candidates online. That's what we're going to talk about. And I think a lot of the conversations that we've had here have been about candidate experience, and that's what we're going to focus on. So, we all spend all day online. Whether we admit it or not, we all spend all day online. I recently went on vacation with 4 teenagers, and I realized that the younger you are, the more attached to the end of your arm is a mobile phone, right? So these are numbers from the Pew Research Group. So this is kind of an independent group that said that the average person spends 6 hours a day online not doing work stuff. And 40% of that time is done on a mobile phone, okay? I find that most of the experiences that I have online are awesome. I think the people who build the apps that run on my phone, the people who build the websites that I visit, how I consume media, how we do social media, how we buy things in an e-commerce context, I think those experiences are amazing. I even say paying my Amex bill is a pleasure, right? They have optimized that experience completely, right? It's a perfect experience. Yet, the career sites of most companies are stuck in what I call the pre-iPhone era. They're stuck in 2006. The navigation is bad. The branding is really bad. You can't use that career site in any kind of a meaningful way on your mobile device, okay? And I found amazingly that the bigger the company, in many regards, the worse this problem is, okay? And Jibe as a company is here to fix that problem, is to save the world from a bad candidate experience online. And this bad experience with bad branding and bad navigation, I just want to go back for a second and talk about this, is just because I forgot something that's important. I see my clock and I got plenty of time. Career sites are the last place on the internet where it's okay for companies to change brand. Career sites are the last place on the internet where it's okay to not support mobile. Imagine if Amazon told you when you go to checkout, when you're buying something on your iPad, that says, go to your PC to complete the transaction. You would never do it. But we're doing that in the career site business, and it begs the question why, and I think it has to be fixed, and that is the mission of Jive, to change that. And if you see something on this list that actually points to a condition in your organization, right? If it's hard to fill positions, if there are people in the organization who are angry or frustrated, all right? If you're losing out on people that you think you should be winning on, or if there's poor brand perception, candidate experience is literally at the root cause of those challenges. So I'm so happy to talk right now about Jive's Candidate Experience Platform, right? Our mission with this software and how we've been assembling it over the last 3.5 years is very simple, right? It isn't about technology. It isn't about anything else. It's really, really simple. Is how do we enable every single candidate who comes to your career site to have what we call a consumer-like experience? An experience that is akin to the way that we use social media. An experience that is the same as when we look at news or other information sources on the internet, all right? And deliver this on top of your existing core applicant tracking system. As we all know, in talent acquisition and recruiting, applicant tracking systems are at the core of that business process, right? And for the largest organizations in the world, they've had these applicant tracking systems for some time, and they are literally impeding the ability for organizations to deliver an awesome candidate experience in a meaningful way. So, what does it mean to deliver a consumer-level candidate experience? It means from the design and branding on your website, to the way people search for jobs, to the way they apply for jobs, to the way they get notified during the process and about open positions, to the way that you engage those candidates on any device integrated with your ATS. All right? So I'm just going to quickly flip through some examples of this, okay, so you guys can see what we're talking about. The first piece is making sure that all of your career sites show up awesome on Google, because that's where everybody starts. So SEO optimize everything in your site. Designing and branded hosted by Jive that reflects the modern web design of 2015 so that your site does not look like it came from the pre-iPhone era. Job search that literally works the way that consumer job search is supposed to work. Google has been implanted in our brain. We all know how to search for stuff, except we have to do it differently on a career site. And it doesn't make any sense. And that includes things like searching in multiple languages or searching on a map. All right, because search is a hugely important part. And we don't talk about the differences in mobile and desktop computing. We talk about a candidate experience that is the same regardless of what device you happen to be interacting with. Because that's the way consumers expect their online experiences to behave. And we're bringing that to the candidate and to the candidate experience. Last but not least, give the candidates some options as to how they're going to interact with you. So let them sign up for job alerts so that they can be pushed directly to them in a simple and easy way. Let them say, hey, there's not a job opening that's available today, but I'm just going to say this is who I am and these are my skills. I'm going to join your community and you're going to let me know when a job becomes available. Without the pain of having to rip and
Any questions? Bill.
Are you essentially looking at emulation or integration when you talk about working with the ATS? Because if the ATS is rubbish, the experience is rubbish whether you
yes.
have a fancy career site or not.
That's a great question. So our secret sauce, Bill, is we've been working on integrating with the market-leading ATS systems for 4 years. That is the secret sauce. We're able to do things as an organization that allows us to integrate with those ATS systems and actually enhance what they natively do terribly. So that's really the transformational piece of what we're doing. It's our secret sauce. And since we've done that for the largest market share, ATSs, we're able to address the biggest companies in the world, which are offering the biggest market opportunity for us as a company.
But effectively, are you still need to emulate the
Yes.
company's application process rather than using, say, intelligent parsing or something like
Exactly. So clearly for things like the questions that we ask in a particular question flow, there are a whole bunch of reasons why we can't change that. Although we do coach our clients about how to make those things more effective. And one of the research points that we just showed is that, and I think there was some information about it today, was the faster that you can actually complete an application flow, the more likely that application is actually going to be completed and submitted, and you get a live job candidate for that. So we work with our clients to do that, but at the end of the day, that's their questions, and we are just the ability to make that an awesome candidate experience.
Yes, Bagelman.
I have an observation, just feedback, and then I have a question. Is that fair? Two things?
Sure.
So it's funny, you start out by saying, hey, I'm not going to talk to you about mobile, and for 7 minutes you talk about mobile. Which is kind of weird because the ethos of your presentation was like, we used to do that, we departed from that, and I don't want to talk about that. And then you said everything else about mobile and how it's a bad hiring experience. So just presentation style, figure out how to tie that together so it doesn't sound like you started out by doing one thing and then contradicting
Sure,
yourself.
great, thanks.
Just feedback.
I will point out, though, that is immaterial to the investment viability of a product.
Totally. It's just feedback. Okay, you turned me off. Oh, got it. Okay. So essentially, I've kind of watched Jibe evolve over time. I kind of sat back and I'm like, sounds like you're a UX UI company. You're essentially designing user interfaces. I mean, and honestly, you could buy some really good ones in 99 designs for a couple $1,000.
Yeah.
That kind of have that. So how do you guys, the direction you've moved into over time, sounds like you're building really cool UX UI for the recruitment process. Great. But then how does that then differentiate from like the 150 UX UI firms that are just in Austin?
Yeah, so clearly the slide that is up there is actually the secret sauce that answers your question really simply. Right? Anybody can get a UI design from any kind of a vendor or a graphics art house. It's actually a relatively commoditized approach. But how do you actually create that and integrate it end to end with your applicant tracking system? And that really is the secret sauce for what we're doing. There's going to be lots of vendors who are going to be able to say, I can provide you with consumer-oriented candidate experience, and that it works on a mobile device, and I have a talent network, and I have job notifications. But all of them are also going to say that you have to rip and replace your ATS, which we know is a generational piece of technology that takes a significant amount of effort and time to be able to rip and replace that technology. What is unique about what we're doing, and what is so incredibly valuable, is that you can actually do that on top of your existing applicant tracking system. And that's what really separates it from just the UI or UX technology.
And Bill, you had a question?
Yeah, more on the observation side, but as an investor perspective, the one question I always want to understand and get a feel for is, what do I really have to believe from a just pure success basis that you're going to make it not just be successful in a minimal way, but in a big way. So in 5-6 years, how do you go from kind of like a mid-level player to the top echelon? So I would pitch it from that perspective, because I've got to make investment, I've got to make money on the investment. And
Got it.
I didn't quite hear why you're going to win in a pretty crowded field.
Got it, yeah. Is that a question, should I answer? Yeah, so the wonderful thing about that is there's about 1,500 companies in the US who have the kinds of challenges that we think need addressing, and we've only addressed less than 100 of them. So the market opportunity for us is just beginning, and I think the more that organizations like the Candies and the other groups that we heard today talk about candidate experience, the more pressing this issue becomes over time, and I think that's really the big opportunity.
All right. Thank you very much, Ivan Casanova and Jibe. Please join me in welcoming to the stage our second presenter, Daniel Chiat, CEO of Greenhouse Technologies.
Hello. Daniel Chait, I'm the CEO at Greenhouse. We're a recruiting software platform. We're headquartered in New York City. My background is actually originally as a software engineer. I started my career as a programmer about 20 years ago, and I've been an entrepreneur for about 18 years or so. So I've been a developer, I've been a salesperson. At my last company, I took over recruiting and ultimately ran recruiting and HR for the company globally. So I've kind of sat in the seats of hiring managers, executives, recruiters, recruiting managers, and felt a lot of the pain, which is a big part of what inspired me when we created Greenhouse in 2012. And really our focus was, what is the biggest, most impactful set of problems that's faced by recruiting, and how can we most effectively solve those for the most companies? So our take on it was, we need to understand that first and foremost, recruiting is the most important strategic driver for most businesses. So it's hard pressed today to find an executive who's going to say to you, actually, recruiting isn't that important, right? It's kind of almost become trite to say, yeah, talent drives great companies. Everybody knows that now. The problem is actually doing it. And I think a lot of what we've heard today, and you hear at lots of conferences like this, is that the disconnect between the vision of talent and recruiting as a key driver of businesses and the reality at almost every company today is that they just stink at it. Right? They do a terrible job at interviewing, they do a terrible job at measuring, they do a terrible job at using data and evidence, as we heard from our last presenter. Greenhouse was designed to fix those problems for companies, to help every company be great at recruiting by using evidence and a structured process across the organization to succeed at recruiting and to make it a competitive advantage. I'm going to go through a product demo because I think it's the best way to understand our product. I know we've only got a few minutes, but I think we can get through some of the highlights. Okay, so what we're going to see how we measure sourcing. That's one of the biggest problems companies have. How do I spend my time and money effectively to get the right candidates and enough of them? Interviewing, we're going to talk about how do I put a candidate in a room with one of my people and actually do a good job, a smart job, interviewing that person, providing meaningful feedback, and using evidence to make good decisions about who to move forward with. That's the difference between a great company and a company that isn't succeeding at recruitment. And then lastly, we'll get into a little bit of pipeline and reporting if you guys want and if we have some time. So if you can actually switch over now to the laptop, I'm going to pull that up. And I'm plugged in. And you guys aren't seeing it. Well, there you have it. Any help back there? No. Yep, if you can switch back to the PowerPoint while they're making that work, we can cover some of the highlights. Okay, enough already. Let's see the darn thing. Well, we'll get to that in a sec. But a little bit about our business. So we've been in business since 2012. We had the product in the market for just about 2 years. We're on track for our 1,000th customer this year. We shot out of the gate really in Silicon Valley. So we took some of the fastest growing, most talent-driven, most forward-thinking organizations. And that was really our initial customer base. Now we're getting adopted more into companies that hire similar types of people, so knowledge workers, thought workers, whether it's creative agencies, digital firms, et cetera, just larger, more established companies. So we have companies that are global in nature with offices around the world, running talent and recruiting, and increasingly enterprises as well. Looks like we may have had some success over here, but nonetheless, so our business has been on a fast growth track. We raised about $25 million of venture capital so far. Most recently, we raised 2 rounds last year, our Series A over the summer, about $7.5 million, led by Social Capital Partnership, one of the top SaaS investors in the Bay Area. And then our Series B in December was $13.6 million, led by Benchmark. We're up at about 90 people right now. That's about 70 or so in the New York area and about the balance in San Francisco. I'm hiring a director of finance. I wouldn't be doing my job as a CEO if I didn't mention all my open hires in any form that I can. So if anybody has a suggestion for that, I'd appreciate those referrals. So we're going to try to pull up that product demo maybe one more time. If you guys, any thumbs up back there, how do you think that's going to go? Nope, they're not seeing it. Well, the good news is I've left you guys with something that you're dying to see. I've built up some drama. The bad news is I think you would have loved to see it. In any event, maybe I'll walk you through like kind of the key highlights, right? So for us, cutting to the chase, the biggest, most leveraged aspect of a failing recruiting process turning into an outstanding recruiting process is the interview. We heard in our last session about the candidate experience. And sure, your website has a big role to play in the candidate experience, but almost all of the candidate experience is how they interact with you when they get into your process. What happens on the phone screen? What happens when they get sent a take-home test? What happens when they come spend hours and hours on site meeting with your various people? In most organizations, that process is a total mess. You step into a room, you chit-chat, you ask about your hobbies, maybe you throw a brain teaser in there. Next person comes in, starts all over again with tell me about your background. Great people don't want to work at a company where you provide them with that. And you're typically doing a really poor job of actually understanding who's the right fit for this role. And so that leads to obviously enormous costs in terms of turnover, lack of good fit for your roles, and taking way too long to make decisions. So companies are incredibly frustrated with this. Greenhouse solves that problem extremely simply. We provide the idea of interview planning. So every time you open a job, we walk you through a very straightforward process. Plan out what you're looking for, number one. What are the key criteria on which you're going to base this decision? Number two, who's going to ask what? So actually outline, hey, we're going to do a phone screen, we're going to do a face-to-face interview, and this and that. And what are we going to cover in each of those? Write a little script. Based on that, Greenhouse provides this idea of an interview kit, which gets on the calendar of every one of your employees that does an interview. They click a link up onto their screen, which we could definitely have shown you, is this idea that, hey, I've got my interview prep. It tells me why I'm in this meeting, who I'm meeting with, what questions I need to focus on, and then a focused scorecard that lets us collect data and evidence about that candidate at each step of the way. The end result is faster hiring decisions, more accurate hires that are better fits for your organization. Customers love it. The last thing I'll call out is if you go onto our Twitter account, you'll see hundreds and hundreds of positive comments about Greenhouse all across the internet. It's really the first time anybody's ever said, I love my ATS. So I'll leave you guys with that. Happy to answer any questions from the panel or from the room.
Hi.
Hi.
So my only question at this point is, I'm definitely seeing your customer base and who you have, predominantly startup and high-tech companies. As you move upstream in the market and start to sell to other organizations that have legacy systems that they're likely replacing,
Yep.
and their long list of requirements that they must have, how are you as an organization positioned to define what products and features you're going to implement versus reject from those customers?
That's a fantastic question and something that I think we excel at. So my co-founder, by the way, is 20 years as a product manager, so that's his life. He lives in the world of balancing customer requests with our own ideas for the vision of the future with competitive market requirements. That's a big part of what we do. The question really boils down to, I think, two parts of the answer. Number one, is our core idea, is our main idea of our solution applicable and scalable all the way up to large companies? I would argue it absolutely is. So the problem of orchestrating interviews, of measuring and attributing sourcing, and providing data and evidence-driven recruiting, if anything, is more applicable and bigger problem at larger organizations, right? So then you're left with the second half of your question, which is really around, there's a bunch of kind of checkbox requirements, features that you have to tackle. And if you look at the history of our organization, for the last couple years we've been in the market, every month our largest customer has been larger than the previous, right? So incrementally we're adding features to get to that next scale. So now we comfortably handle companies that are thousands of employees on a global basis, and we'll get to, in a year or two, tens of thousands of employees. These are basic things like we're handling compliance features for Germany right now. We're handling features around distributed searching for openings across a large organization. So there's an endless checklist of those things. And by the way, once you finish them all, then you can handle GE, right? But until then, there are obviously many thousands of customers along the way, each of whom needs kind of an incremental next few chunks of features. So we continuously work on those. Of course, migrating data from their old ATS into Greenhouse is another thing that we apply lots of resources, and we've got tools and automation for. We have a data migration team. So that's a big part of what we focus on, is really how do we handle larger and larger organizations.
I've got two questions, one of which will take a really quick answer,
Good.
or 30-second answer.
That's an eternity.
ATS, CRM, or something else?
I would say ATS plus CRM plus something else.
So something else. Okay, that's cool. And my next question, when you talk about being global,
Yes.
You're quite process-driven in terms of forms, questions, structuring interview, which I don't think is a bad thing. But how do you roll that out globally when you've got cultural and language nuances in places like Germany and Italy and the many European countries?
Yeah, I mean, I think
are
what
not all
we,
the same.
no, if I take the question correctly, I mean, I think the thing that we really try to do is arm recruiting or HR to have a useful conversation with the heads of the lines of business and the people that they face off with about improving their process. So it's less about that Greenhouse has like the magic set of 8 questions you need to ask every salesperson. I think that's BS. I think the truth is, we're really taking everybody from kind of the floor where they're at today of, hey, let's just like throw somebody into a room and figure out, if we share some hobbies. And let's move it into a world where, like, generally speaking, we're going to write down some questions ahead of time. We're going to ask those questions of every candidate. We're going to write down the answers, and then we're going to look at the evidence. And like, that's pretty straightforward stuff that I would argue if every company did that, they would be leaps and bounds above where they are today. So people are pretty ready to do that. Now, I think the truth of kind of inside your question is, there's tremendous variation in how you would run that process. And that's not just a geographical question. If you look at a sales team or an executive search versus an entry-level customer service person, there's a whole different kind of way of analyzing the candidate. But the basic idea of being data and evidence-driven, I think, is relatively universal.
That's good. I like that.
Okay. A real quick one. So $25 million, some great VCs backing you. Part A, what are you doing with the $25 million? And then part B, I'm a big believer in building businesses by milestones. I'd be interested in terms of what you think your next critical milestone is.
Yeah, absolutely. So for us, we absolutely run the company according to those type of milestones. And having done this a few times in a row now, I've kind of been playing the movie again. For us, we've really made the transition in the last year from a early stage startup that was trying to find our product market fit, in which case we were very much not focused on growth. We were really focused on understanding who buys our product, why do they buy it, what does our contract look like, some of these questions about features and where do we sit in the market, yeah? Having solved those and really arrived at a growth formula, we pivoted very concretely and very intentionally into high growth mode, right? We have now, so my role, for example, as CEO, I've completely shifted. I used to spend a lot of time on the road and out, selling to customers. I do very little of that today. I'm spending my time almost entirely in the organization on organization building, hiring managers, doing management training, working on interdepartmental communication. So that's kind of one point is what are we using the money for? It's part growth, right? So we're funding our sales and marketing and customer acquisition engine, which is now quite repeatable and is basically fueled by capital. And another part is really building out the organization itself. As far as our own milestones and objectives, there's 4 of them, and almost everyone in my company could name. So number 1 is to continue to lead in product innovation. We intentionally chose a strategy in the ATS space, which is to lead in product innovation. We felt like if it was a race to the top instead of a race to the bottom, that's a race we feel like we have a chance to win. Number 2 is extending our market beyond the early tech startups. Our go-to-market strategy was to sell to the people that kicked down the door, and we had 30 customers before we had a website live. And really now moving into more late-stage adopters and fast followers is really what we're about now. Third is about scale, right? So that's both servicing larger customers and, of course, more of them. So we're distributing our data centers. We've got a big investment in security and infrastructure on our software plant. And then last is to build a world-class organization. So I brought in a friend of mine who was, in her own right, an entrepreneur, had sold her company to Living Social. I brought her in as my VP of people, and we're building out a world-class people organization as well. So those are our 4 milestones that we're using, and we think that if we can tick those 4 off, we'll be well positioned in the next phase of the company.
Just to piggyback off of that, so, I mean, there's Lever, there's Workable, HireVue's building a lot of collaboration features. There's just a ton of new innovation coming down the pike in the space around collaborative recruiting. So how do you guys exit? I mean, there's so many companies out there and only so many potential acquirers. So as an investor, like, how do I rationalize and then have a view towards sort of monetizing some sort of liquidity event?
Yeah, I mean, it's a fair question. I mean, I think, where we started from, and I think what made us different from a lot of the other companies in the space, and not just, by the way, those ones, but the last generation did the same thing, which kind of looked at ATSs and said, the problem with ATS is that they're ugly and clunky, and we're going to make one that's really pretty. Like, kind of. That's not really what we think is the core problem. We think the core problem isn't that recruiting is a hassle, and we're going to make it easy and get it over with so you can get back to your real job. We think the core problem is recruiting is really hard, and super important, and you stink at it. We're going to help you get better at it. And we think if we can do that for most companies, we think we create a lot of value.
So how do I, as an investor, get value?
I mean, I think the point is to build a big company that's doing, creating value for almost every organization. You have lots of options. So to your question about exit strategy, are we trying to get acquired or become a big independent company? I'd say too early to say, right? But I think those options are available to us. I think there's another piece to what is inside your question. Maybe I can address if I get 15 seconds. So, historically, the kind of lock-in or the kind of market dynamic model in here hasn't really been very, very winner-take-all, right? You can't lock in or you can't really achieve a dominant position through features, especially today when software is so cheap to build. So what's kind of the secret sauce behind what we're doing is we create so much more and such better data, right? That actually we're generating a huge amount of value based on that. So what we say to our customers is by creating structured scorecards, structured interviews, structured feedback, and pulling all your sourcing in, we can now say, so we have a little bit over 1,000 staffing agencies submit candidates to our platform today to our customers. We've done tens of thousands of hires, millions of interviews, millions of candidates, right? Each of those has dozens of data points about them. So how far do those candidates make it? Where do they drop out and why? How long does it all take? How much is everyone spending? The next phase of our product platform is to take that data and use it to create value for our customers, right? So things like making predictions for them. If I do this, what's it going to result? Setting benchmarks for them. Most companies and most folks I talk to have a really hard time understanding not only their own performance, but how does that stack up against the competition and increasing automation. So I think if we can pull in those types of additional network effects by being on the platform that has all the data, and by the way, is the most highly integrated. We've got 36 recruiting products integrated onto the platform today. You mentioned HireVue. HireVue sits in a category of about 12 or 15 other recruiting platforms for digital interviews, many of which are already integrated and more coming every day. We hear from 1 or 2 a day to integrate onto Greenhouse. And the point where you can come to Greenhouse and get all your recruiting technology plugged onto our platform, whether it's a sourcing tool like Intello, a testing tool like HackerRank, a digital interview platform like Jibe, all the way through to onboarding and background checks from HireRight and Parkled. That's a really powerful platform that people really, really want.
And with that, let's please give a hand to Greenhouse.
That's it.
So I will say, though, obviously, if you want to get a demo, go to greenhouse.io. It's amazing what happens when an HR or RPO professional fills in a demo request. I promise you'll get one quite expediently. So next, up in the order, we have David Brindell, who is the Global Vice President of Product, Head of Digital for the Americas for Universum. Welcome, David.
Pleasure to meet you. Absolutely. Pleased to meet you. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
I have only 7 minutes, so I can get right to the point. Does social matter? Hell yes. Yes, it absolutely matters. We wake up to it in the morning. It's the last thing we look at before we go to bed. And you know what? It's becoming one of the most pervasive tools to actually influence talent. Hell, we spend 2.6 hours a day on social media tools. Argentinians spend more than 4. A hell of a lot of time that we're spending on these platforms. So, but before we get into the HR sphere, let's look at another industry, an industry which has been using social media for a little bit longer than we have. And so what do marketers think of social media? It's one of the most powerful tools that they use to actually grow their brand and grow demand. And because of all of these marketers using the platform, it's created a wonderful industry because we need to measure what we're doing. And that industry today is $620 million, but in only 5 years, it's going to grow to $3 billion. So where there's money, there's measurement. And at Universum, we're in the business of measuring employer brands. And so what we did is we went out to the 200 largest employer brands in North America, and we asked a simple question. How many of these are on social media? 2/3 of them are today. But that's grown by 600% in the last 24 months. So there's a land rush going on now with employers trying to get onto social media. But all the tools are built for marketers. I can measure engagement, I can get likes, shares, I can get cross-platform, maybe I can get some demographics. But if what I'm writing today, is that resonating to that Ohio State female engineer who I have to get into my business? And what's best practice? I had to do this with my businesses. I had to start every morning with a blank piece of paper and write something, oh my God, about employer branding again, every single day. So we quickly realized at Universum that there is no measurement tool for social media in HR. It's all for marketers. So we saw an opportunity at Universum. And if you haven't heard of Universum before, you've probably heard of us because we're in the Wall Street Journal, CNN. We run the world's largest talent survey every single year. We're connected to millions of students, millennials, professionals, graduates, and we get them to answer a really boring survey. We're really good at connecting to them. And also, we have, for the last 25 years, built this really sexy framework. And this framework is used by 80% of the Fortune 500 companies, and it's actually built in the language of talent. And what it does is talent has told us what's important in an employer. And we've done that, and employers, when they, surprise, surprise, focus on these things that talent tells them they should focus on, they become more attractive, and they hire better people more quickly. And lastly, in my background, what I did was I'm impatient. So I went to all the largest social media platforms in the world, leveraged our big relationships with them, and I told them I want the posts from every single employer in North America as far back as 2010. And with that, we've created Iris. Iris is talent's view of your social activities. So what does that mean? It means that we take your post from today, we take away your brand, we apply all the research methodology and rigor that we use at Universum for the last 25 years, and we ask them a really simple question. What do you think this content is about? And they use our framework to apply a content theme to it. But what's really cool is we also are able to pull in all of the engagement data. So we get what they think about the content and their behaviors on it. So what we did is we went out to the largest employers in North America, and we asked them to partner with us. And over this last 100-day journey, we've got 900 companies whom we are also tracking, pretty much everyone in this room. And we've had talent look at over 350,000 posts from LinkedIn and Twitter, as far back as 2006. And what's happened with our foundation clients is, like at Manulife, they found that Iris has been able to allow them to talk on similar terms with marketers. With AT&T, it allows her to quantitatively view what's going on in social media instead of subjectively. And with Exxon, it's really simple. They want to talk about the things that matter most to their talent. And what's really cool and has come out of this data is that I can tell you that more than 60% of all the volume from employer brands last year happened in the fall. I can tell you that 1 in 5 posts last year from employers, talent, thought they were about corporate social responsibility. And I can also tell you that 64% of those posts had no engagement at all, meaningful, wasted. I can tell you that talking on LinkedIn and what engages talent is very, very different than what engages talent on LinkedIn. I can also, in a very quick way, in a beautiful system, go through and show you how you compete today, last year, last week, against your competitors across platforms. You can then look strategically and see where the noise is across time. I can tell you that most of the CSR posts last year happened in the fall. So do I make a decision to pay to be number one? Or do I experiment in the early part of the year, and can I own it in January? You can zoom in on a particular value that you're focused on. You know, every one of you has a core EVP or USP values, and you can see when that matters to you most, and more importantly, when that matters to talent. So we can zoom in. We can see where the demand is and where the engagement is across time. And you can look across years, weeks, months, and days. But most importantly, when I see an opportunity for this particular value, I want to be inspired. I want to see who does it best. So you can see where you play and from a competitive landscape, but you can also see all of those 350,000 posts today are now in a case study library. And very quickly, you can go in, select the attributes or values that you want to focus on today, select the industries where you compete in, select the countries that you compete in, the date range, obviously that's important, and then be inspired. So Iris is a really interesting platform. We have, for the first time, we're a research company. We're built around strong methodology. So for the first time, you can actually quantitatively benchmark your content. No more subjective iterations every single day. You can access a standardized and global case study library to be inspired every single morning. For the first time, you can link qualitative data and quantitative data together. You can compare your work across platforms. Everyone thinks that you can cross-post from Facebook to LinkedIn, and most of you do. Don't. That's not right. What engages talent on LinkedIn is very different than Twitter, than Pinterest, Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. And finally, this is coming in every minute. We're getting data in every single minute into our platform. So it's now a competitive advantage, and because social media moves so fast, it's important to be able to stay on the pulse.
Questions? And any questions from the judges? Bill?
My question relates around the data in that you're collecting a lot of personal data from personal channels, which I think leads us into some kind of spooky post-Snowden type conversations. How do you keep that? How do you show trend while respecting personal privacy in personal data?
Sure. We're not collecting any personal data. This is all publicly available data on Facebook posts and feeds. And every single talent, let's just call them, they opt in and they build a profile, just like they do for our research studies, and answer that.
So it's an opt-in for you to use the data in that way, or is it a...
No, for talent. So the talent who's looking at the posts and who's actually coding the posts, that's all very above board. But all the posts that we're pulling in from Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter and Instagram, those are all public.
Right.
Questions?
What's your revenue model?
Yeah, sure. So, a revenue model. Interesting question. Yeah. So, Iris is wrapped in this great, big, awesome company called Universum, which has a lot of consulting services. We do a lot of research services as well. But Iris will be a SaaS model, be a monthly subscription. And on our product roadmap for Iris, there's also bundling and membership services. So we can have the Universum experts, interpret the data, look at trends. We're also looking at lots of predictive tools that are going to be plowed into this. So Iris can tell you what you should be and should not be talking about. And then finally, that will lead into we have activation services in our business. So we have a multi-million-dollar business where we actually help clients say the right things on social media platforms.
So you actually do content as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Any other questions? All right, great. Thank you very much. Oh.
So just to all the contestants, just because I'm sitting in the audience, I'm confused, and that's not hard. But if you added up like private equity, IPOs, and secondaries, I probably helped raise about $500 million. You got to have at least a sentence in there that says, and we make money by. You only have 7 minutes. You don't want to go into a whole discussion of it. But I've sat through a few of these. How do you make money? If you want me to invest in your firm, and I invest in a lot of them, even some that are in this room, you got to say how you make money.
In all fairness, in this industry, that's not, LinkedIn has never had a profitable quarter, yet they are worth about $28 billion. So I think that we're strange times here. But point taken, Elliot.
We can have that debate because LinkedIn had to tell someone how they were going to make money. All right, now whether they've gotten there.
But any other questions for Universum? And thank you, Elliot. Send some of that money my way, please. No, and for Universum.
Thank you.
We moved from 3 New York-based companies in a row to a very different vibe. Please join me in welcoming Alan Johnson, the head of marketing for Talent Objects by Lumess.
Hello, as he said, I'm Alan Johnson, the head of marketing for Lumess Talent Objects. Just a quick slide. This is just to give you a little perspective about what we're bringing to this new initiative that we're doing with Salesforce, which is quite a bit of experience, quite a few customers, a lot of knowledge that came with us as we started creating Talent Objects by Lumess. This thing isn't going. Nope. Well, this isn't actually our stuff. Here we go. Nope. There it goes. Yep, it's got it. Okay, so Talent Objects by Lumess. We set out to build business HR tools that even business people can love. We built it on the Salesforce platform. We're building user experience around their mobile, social, and collaborative capabilities for one reason, and that is that we had set out to build this with user experience in mind. So we started with people, not process. We work our way back to the tools that we need to have there to deliver the user experience that people are challenged in. We'll show you that here in a second. The process that we followed is a pretty simple recipe. So we wanted to keep it simple so that even business users like me, non-HR professionals, could use it to help with recruiting. Make it mobile so that recruiting doesn't stop when people are moving around. Connect it to social so that you can enable collaborative hiring teams or employees as recruitment marketing people on the social web. And most importantly, run it on Salesforce so we can build that bridge to the business. That is the platform they prefer. That's what we've done, and we've made it mobile from top to bottom. So from the requisition processes and approval processes all the way through most of your candidate processes, including offer letters and acceptance, all of that occurs in a mobile environment. And I'm going to have Mark give you a quick run through, I hope, of the tool itself.
Great, thanks, Alan. So I'm Mark Lewandowski. I head up the pre-sales team here at Talent Objects, and I guess I have a face for radio, which is why I'm back here. So today I'm going to show you two quick little vignettes that are related around the end user client experience, candidate experience, and also a hiring manager experience. So I'm driving this off of my iPhone here, and hopefully you can all hear me well, okay. So I wanted to introduce you to Mike Wolf. Mike Wolf is a solutions engineer. He was at a industry conference, much like this one, where he was presenting a demo. Fortunately, his demo exceeded the allotted time and he got disqualified, so Mike's kind of dejected on his way to the airport. So Mike gets a tweet from a friend about a solutions engineer job at Salesforce.com. So Mike goes to Salesforce.com's career site, investigates around, sees a tab on culture. Culture is very important to Mike. So he goes ahead and tries to learn more about the Salesforce culture, learns about Spirit of Aloha, Hawaii, palm trees, philanthropy, quickly decides that Salesforce is the kind of place that he'd like to work, goes back to the Jobs tab, takes a look at the Solutions Engineer position, starts looking at the description, reads through the description, looks at the responsibilities, requirements. This is a job that meets Mike's skills well. Clicks on Apply. He applies with LinkedIn. First thing that comes up, he asks what location he's interested in. San Francisco is a good location. That's where he wants to be. Mike logs in with his LinkedIn credentials. And this is an important step because as Mike is logging in with LinkedIn, a lot of the information that's needed in the application process comes across from LinkedIn. So the first thing that we see here is, Mike's concerned because a lot of these application processes could be quite involved. He sees that there's 6 steps. First step is contact info. His contact info comes across from his LinkedIn profile. The next step is to upload a resume. He sees that there's a Dropbox option. Mike's a Dropbox user, selects his latest resume, attaches it to the application, and moves on to the next step, where you notice that skills. So all of these skills come from his LinkedIn profile, then as well as his employment history. And now there's a couple of job-specific questions. So he selects how many years experience he has, selects how many years experience proficiency with HTML. Mike's a road warrior, so he doesn't mind traveling 60% of the time. And this is the last step. So a couple legal questions, gender, ethnicity. Hit submit. And voila, we will hopefully in a second here see that the application has been accepted. So Mike gets to the airport, starts walking to his gate, is excited about the possibility of working for Salesforce, but also marveling at how easy it was to set up this whole process. So for my last vignette, I want to introduce you to Jane Aaron. So Jane is a sales manager at Salesforce, so she uses Salesforce.1, and Jane got a chatter feed that there's a new job applicant for solutions engineer. So she navigates to requisitions, takes a look at the solutions engineer requisition, and is interested in taking a look at who all the candidates are. Sees there's a few new ones here today. And what we're looking at here is these are the candidate dashboard for the solutions engineer position. So we see a number of people here, and we see Mike Wolf. So I could pull up the candidate card for Mike Wolf. I could review his resume. I could look at his LinkedIn search profile. Mike looks like an interesting candidate, so I'm going to go ahead and quickly give a thumbs up feedback here. This is definitely somebody that we want to talk to. And then I'm going to also send a chatter note to Tyler, who's our HR recruiter, and say, Tyler, I'd like to go ahead and set up an interview for Mike. So, just as easily as that, I've shown you two scenarios using my iPhone. One was a candidate experience. Someone on his way to the airport was able to find, review a job, apply. And then also I showed you a hiring manager also using their iPhone and using an app that they use on a regular basis and able to do real work. So just to kind of reiterate the points that Alan mentioned up front, we're keeping it simple, keeping it mobile, there's social aspects, and we're running on Salesforce. Thank you.
And one of the reasons that, let me close on one of the reasons that we develop on the platform. We selected the Salesforce platform because we can collect, or we can tap all that underlying capability. This application took us about 100 days, so we get the speed out of the platform. Thank you all very much.
If you want to now come up and reveal your radio face for Q&A, that'd be awesome.
Mark is back there, so.
Yeah, no.
He's hiding.
I see him. He's like the Wizard of Oz.
He's in his-
But feel free to stay. Any questions? Bill.
You're pretty dependent and tied into the Salesforce platform as talent objects. I know the bigger Lumess picture now. Salesforce have obviously recently made a reasonable investment into smart recruiters, which you could consider to be an equal platform. If I was an investor, I'd be a little bit nervous around that point. I wonder what you would say to that.
So, I guess I don't have a microphone here. We're improvising here. So I think that's a very interesting point, Bill, and I think many of you who have been watching the space know that Salesforce recently made a big announcement around Salesforce for HR. So from our perspective, we look at this as a validation of what we're doing with HR platforms on the Salesforce environment. So, not going to say that we're looking for more competition, but certainly we do feel that with 120,000 plus Salesforce customers out there, there's plenty of space for several of us.
I should probably mention the market that we're really targeting is actually the Salesforce installed base, where they've got off-platform recruiting and talent management capabilities today, so that we can make that case it should be moved on platform. And for exactly the reasons we talk about, when we did a lot of research before we started building this thing, we went and talked to a lot of business users, and business users said, reduce the number of clicks it takes to do requisitions and other stuff I got to do. Can you please make mobile work? And can you run it on the platform that I use? So pretty simple choice.
Yeah, quick question. Just Lumess, well-known ATS in the marketplace, this kind of goes in a completely different direction. So is kind of the business model to move customers towards this that are existing clients, or is it more just you're looking at it as a totally new marketplace?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So I should have pointed out earlier, what we've done, we've launched this business in the U.S. And as you all probably know, the bulk of the Lumess business is offshore. It's in Europe. Ultimately, yeah, we're going to move. The bulk of that business, I would expect, is going to move to the cloud. There's a different set of behaviors relative to the cloud in Europe than the U.S., and there's been more aggressive moves to the cloud here. Salesforce has their strongest install base in the U.S. So there was just a natural synergy when we came together with Salesforce about a year ago or a little over and started talking about this business, that we decided together we're going to launch this business in the Americas. We're going to launch the product in the Americas, and then we'll extend from there. So I think you'll see us not so many existing Lumess customers initially, because most of it's going to be sort of greenfield in the Americas, but I suspect over time you'll see a migration over.
Just one quick question. So the Salesforce one platform, I mean, you could basically download the SDK and create that. So a client could just go to Salesforce, buy that SDK, and create their own apps. So what is your actual product? Are you selling that as a product, or are you selling your capability to develop a app product on the Salesforce platform? I wasn't quite sure. Are you creating a customized sort of one-off Salesforce-based employment app for each client, or is that the product? that you're actually selling? And if it took 100 days, what are kind of the barriers to entry?
Yeah, so what you saw there today was Talent Objects Recruit, which is a first app that we developed and brought to market on March 20th, so it's now on the App Exchange. So we have a roadmap over the course of the next 12 to 18 months to have a full suite of talent management applications, onboarding, performance, learning, et cetera. But this was, so to answer your first question, we're selling an app that is purpose-built for recruiting. But again, we're also selling the vision, the talent management suite of tools, and that's what we're bringing to market.
I think the other part of your question was about the platform itself. So ideally, somebody's going to have the platform already. That's the base we'd like to go to. But we're an OEM, so we OEM the platform. We talked earlier, we also, as part of the agreement, we OEM'd the Work.com objects are part of the agreement back to us. And so we've got the ability, as we start developing Perform and Learn modules, to integrate those objects as well. This is a very, very tightly developed, this is not an integration. I keep telling people, I get asked all the time, are you integrated to Salesforce? And I say, no, we're not integrated to Salesforce. We are Salesforce. We're built inside and on top of Salesforce. But 100% of our development resources, to your point, are driving user experience design. We're using that methodology. We're using the core capabilities in the platform, primarily because we can drive velocity by doing that. And because we can track the innovation cycle of Salesforce, we get advance notice on roadmaps that they've got. We have meetings out there once every other week, it seems like. And so we can track innovations they have coming, things like communities. We're the first guys that put proof of concept applications together for Wave, their analytics program, because we think analytics is such a huge element for what we need to bring HR. And so we'll be demonstrating product at Dreamforce this year. With the Wave analytics. So this is a creation of products that are for sale on the App Exchange, not downloadable by any means, but for sale on the App Exchange for the Salesforce.com, Salesforce One platform.
Thanks for that. That's like really clarifying. I appreciate it.
Any other questions? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Up next, on behalf of Skill Survey, please welcome Rob Bennett, VP of Channel Alliances for Skill Survey.
Whoa. Whew, almost fell. Timer, go. So I'm really excited to wake up every morning. My favorite day is tomorrow because I have the opportunity on a daily basis to impact organizations, not just my organizations, but every organization out there's bottom line. And I'm doing it in a unique way. I'm providing insights that they never dreamed of getting before. Years ago, my hardest part of my job was telling people what I did. Nobody understood it. You get references to answer questions? 20 to 30 questions? No way. And then they'd try it. And then they would buy it. And they don't leave. Sounds like a Roach Motel, but it's not. So the idea is, get people to try it. And so 2009, 4,000 candidates a month are going through the process. And now, last month, 70,000 candidates went through the process. What does that mean? More people touching the solution. On average, 5 references providing feedback. 350,000 people a month experiencing a solution. But here's the difference. There's a lot of buzz in the industry today around technology. Getting people to your site, getting people to apply, getting the right people to apply. How do you interact with them? Do you do video interviewing? Do you do face-to-face? But the one piece everybody's missing, unless they're using us, is they have one problem. It's a two-dimensional experience. They're only getting the candidate's perspective. Think about it. We've all done it. We all have the capability of being something we're not for 30 to 45 minutes. Going out with all the confidence in the world and talking to somebody and telling them, this is how I'm going to do my job, and this is the impact I'm going to have on your organization. And what happens? 90 days later, it's not who you thought. So we've created a technology that recently received its 4th patent. And what we've been able to do is drive people to participate in a program, to get references to answer 20 to 30 job-specific questions in a short amount of time. And it's shown to predict performance and retention. We're doing it so it's improving efficiencies. We've taken a process that takes 20 to 30 minutes to check references, For those organizations that are still checking references, it's interesting how many organizations have moved away and gone to employment verification because they're so frustrated and they're undervaluing an opportunity that, they've gone away from just because they're afraid that they would get in trouble if they asked the wrong question, or more importantly, no one's going to answer their call and they're just wasting time. We've taken a process that takes 20 to 30 minutes and reduced it down to 1 minute. One of the major ROIs is efficiency. The second one is getting people to participate and provide insights that are helping managers better understand who the person is, understand how they're going to perform, and then leveraging that information, not at the end of the process, but using it earlier on so you're able to better understand who the person is during the interview process, and using this on more candidates per position. The other big ROI that we're providing is helping organizations fill a talent pipeline with good people. Good people know good people. And since most organizations are using this towards the end of the hiring process on our final 2 to 3 people, these candidates have been vetted. So think about that. 5 references per candidate, 15 references for every 3 candidates, and we're getting more people to participate. You're giving managers more insights. And at the same time, asking those references at the end of the process, hey, how about you? Are you interested in new job opportunities? We're finding 25 to 30% of references saying, yes, I'm interested. 25 to 30%. Study we did last week for one customer in the staffing industry, for every candidate they enter into the process, they're getting 1.3 references responding saying, yes, I'm interested in new job opportunities. So what does that mean? People from the same industry, from the same job family and location, seeing employment brands. Go back to the number I said earlier. 350,000 people saw our client's employment brand and consumer brand. At the same time, got insights that helped them make a better hiring decision. We're impacting the bottom line. We're helping organizations do more with less. The process is completely confidential. It's getting more raters to participate and to answer these questions, and it's providing job-specific information that organizations are leveraging. So if you think about everyone's hiring process today, again, who's not using us, it's all one-sided. Rarely are you ever getting those insights, but you're trying to, and everything is done from that perspective today. And what we've been able to do is incorporate the behaviors that are necessary to be successful in over 300 different jobs. One of my folks who just started said to me, everybody's talking about big data, small data. What about smart data? That's what we do. We provide data that's helping organizations make better hiring decisions, at the same time providing a funnel of potential candidates that are going through the process. So as a company, we've been around for about 13 years. We've created an extensive library of over 350 job-specific surveys. We've done 15 validation studies to date. And as I mentioned a few months ago, received our 4th patent on the solution. We have over 1,400 customers, and our renewal rate's north of 90%. So how do we make money? We bring a solution that's highly retained by our clients. It becomes part of their hiring DNA. It's all mobile enabled. So last month, over 50% of the candidates who participated, did it on a smartphone. The tool can be used anywhere in the world, any time of the day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Smartphone enabled, tablet enabled, and available in 5 other languages. What we're doing is providing a solution that most organizations never dreamed of getting. And that's what gets me out of bed every morning. I have 43 seconds left. You guys can start your questions if you like.
We're getting a pattern here. I think there was the first question I have is, what can you actually patent in this?
So you can't patent automation. You can't patent that. But you can patent the rigor that you put into the tool and the science behind it. Making it confidential, making it used earlier on in the process, and being able to ask job-specific questions. We're a unique organization. We are not out there just automating a survey, but instead have IO psychologists on staff that have created a tool that is behavior-based. That's what you can protect, the intellectual capital.
So it's the outcomes, it's capability and outcomes that you're patenting rather than other people being able to do questionnaires or
and where you're able
technology.
to use it. in the process, utilizing different types of information, but yes, to your point.
Michael?
So how do you're familiar, I'm sure, with Checkster and other kinds of products, yeah? So there's a whole wave of new products coming down the pike that are essentially involve no human interaction and mitigate fraud, because if I give you 6 references, those references could be my email addresses, they come to me at a different email address, and they give myself a glowing review. So there's a lot of newer technology that's coming down the pike that's kind of doing automated anonymous reference checking. And how does that, if it all challenges your model, how do you guys work around it? How do you compete against it? Like, what's your competitive advantage around the newer technology that's coming down the pike?
No, I appreciate you asking that, because within 7 minutes, I don't get to all the features and benefits. We've done a few things. First of all, it's a completely confidential process. And because of that, you want to stay ahead of the curve. You know, for over 20 years, I'm going to date myself here, but there's a whole episode on Seinfeld about how George tries to game the unemployment process by asking Jerry to answer the phone as Vandelay Industries. So people have always asked us, hey, how are you staying ahead of the curve? So we check the IP address of both the candidate and the references, and when it matches, we highlight it in red. So we're calling that out. We're getting more information that you would get on a typical application, so you could go to LinkedIn and see who these people are. And we're getting primarily professional email addresses. So you have that from the technology side, but the big differential out there between us and any other thing that might come out is that we have a chief science officer in Dr. Hedricks, who presented 2 papers at SciUp this past year. She's been presenting for the last 6 years. She's also had a peer-reviewed paper showing that it does help organizations predict performance and retention. And right now we're following about 50,000 candidates to help understand how it's helping those organizations predict performance as well as retention. So the biggest difference, in my opinion, the science, the rigor that we put behind the tool, as well as the automation that we've created to really make it mobile-enabled as well as available in multiple languages, even down to that aspect. Anybody could go to Google and translate with a bottle of wine on the weekend and translate into different language. We've used a third party to make sure we translate it out and to translate it back in. The biggest difference is the rigor we put between the tool.
What would you say your biggest barrier to customer adoption? What's the pushback you get from the sales process?
The part I love the most, nobody has money for this. It's not a line item. It's not an ATS. It's not advertising. I have to create budget on a daily basis. So to do that, I have to show that we provide a real outcome. People don't have a budget for what we do. That's the first thing. The second thing is they've been hurt mentally that references aren't going to answer the phone, so why spend money on it? And that's why we usually start with a trial. And once they start using it, they highly adopt it. So the hardest part of my job is getting them into the car, because once they drive it, it becomes part of their hiring DNA.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Rob. Thank you, Skills Survey.
Last, but certainly not least, and definitely the person who traveled the furthest, please welcome Shane Gray, Senior Vice President of Sales and Business Development for Clinch.
Thank you very much. For all the talk of how hard it can be to hire the right people, we don't always make it easy for them to find our careers content or find our careers pages, interact with our careers content, or apply for a job. Here's an example I was on earlier this week. The link to the careers site on the corporate page is buried at the bottom of the page. In fact, I've cheated because I've had to condense that slide or to be 3 stories high. It was so far beneath the fold. So I get there, I click on the link. It's in about 5-point type. It took me 2 minutes to find it. And I'm taken to a search process to find a job that's complicated, to say the least. It's not the classical Google single box. It requires me to fill in 3 or 4 fields. I then have to, I click on the link, and I get to see some jobs I may be interested in. So there's a couple there that look interesting. I click on one to apply, and then I'm told I have to log in. But of course, I can't log in because I don't have an account. So I start the account creation process. And that gets quite convoluted. I have to fill in a whole bunch of fields. I have to pick a password, and in this case, I've been told it has to, well, I'm actually told after I haven't got it to work 3 times. It needs an uppercase character, a lowercase character. And like at this point, souls are falling off this process the whole way along. So finally, I do create the account. I log in, and I start to get back to the original application process for the job that I was interested in. And I'm immediately confronted with a process that has about 8 steps, and I give up. I don't complete that. I don't apply for the job. Here's an example of someone who does it a little bit better. They put some of the careers content front and center on the corporate page. They make it easy to navigate to the careers site. They've got lots of engaging, interesting content, and they make it much easier for me to understand more about the company. But yet again, when it comes to applying for a job, the search is a little bit easier. It's a single box. But I search for a job, but yet again, when I click to apply, I have to register, I have to create an account. So this time I'm confronted with, again, five or six fields and a particularly difficult CAPTCHA that it takes me 3 or 4 tries to work out. So I fail again, I don't apply for a job. And the sad reality is that for all the millions of dollars spent on these sites and the millions of really hard-won visits they get from different channels, social media, jobs boards, all across the spectrum, that only a really small percentage of candidates actually apply for jobs and end up in the applicant tracking funnel. But the difficulty with this is we all know that even these people who do make the application, they've qualified themselves as being good form fillers necessary than being the right people, and the elusive passive candidate doesn't apply and seldom, if ever, completes the processes I've just described. If Amazon treated their customers like this, they wouldn't sell a thing, and they'd be bust. Clinch helps you to understand who these people who are not applying for jobs are. We help you attract them, and we do that by helping you create relevant careers content, push it out across multiple channels, social media, partnerships with job boards. We help you attract the candidates. We then help you identify them. We help your hiring teams identify the candidates that they may be interested in adding to your teams. We then help you nurture these candidates further, and we help you hire them. We help you hire them by speeding up your hiring process, making it easier for the candidate. It also delivers a better candidate experience, because now all these people are in your hiring pipeline, but they don't even know it because they haven't had to apply for a job yet. So here's how it works. Nick here is an example. He was originally attracted to the careers page. It was a mobilized careers page. He was attracted via social media, but he could have come from a jobs board, or he could equally have come directly from the corporate site. So he looks at the mobile careers page, he looks at some engineering roles, and he doesn't apply. And in fact, we don't even know his name is Nick because he didn't apply for a job. But lucky for us, 3 months later, he comes back. And using a Clinch customized call to action, we're able to nudge him to download an ebook. What we've done is we've set up a call to action for people who have previously looked at engineering roles, and we've nudged them to download this ebook, which is about working in the organization. So he downloads the ebook, and we're able to use his email address to build a rich profile of Nick. This immediately identifies him to the hiring teams as somebody who is of particular interest. In this case, Nick happens to be an up-and-coming iOS developer. So Nick views some other roles over the coming weeks, and then he's back looking at engineering roles again, and we have some new open recs we need to fill. So Clinch is able to trigger, a recruiter can trigger an automated email to send Nick a customized nudge to say, hey, Nick, we think you'd be great for this job. Why don't you apply for it? We're able to bundle that up, give Nick a link directly to the job within the ATS system, so no more complicated searching. We're also able to pass over some of the information we know about Nick into the ATS system, so when he's filling out all these forms, we can reduce the burden of that for him somewhat. At the end of the day, Nick then submits his application, and he is successfully hired. And this is where it's interesting, because the candidate experience from his perspective was really good. He felt the outreach from the hiring team was timely. It wasn't like the usual cold calling he experienced from people surfing through his LinkedIn CV. And the hiring team thought the process went well as well. Nick was knowledgeable about the company. He knew who he'd be working with. In fact, one of the interviewers had written the ebook, which he downloaded previously, and it was a smooth process. We can also predict that Nick is quite a good fit with the company. We've seen that he's been interested in us for quite a period of time. So all in all, it bodes well. And again, the fact that he has had a smooth, easy process, it means he's more likely to help us refer more engineers into our teams. Of all the millions of candidates everybody in the audience has here who are visiting their career sites, and they're being ignored because they don't apply.
All right.
So any questions?
Questions? Judges?
So I don't know if you got cut off, but I just I don't actually know what the product is.
To sum up, yeah, we were, and I wouldn't mind, I had that down to 5 minutes, so time must expand here. A good analogy would be HubSpot for hiring, okay? So we use sales and marketing techniques to help convert passive candidates and website visitors into your hiring pipeline. So it's a full platform from creating the content, pushing it out across different channels, watching the people who come back in, and then ultimately identifying the ones of interest and being able to reach out to them because they're typically ignored unless they apply in the traditional ATS environment.
Any other questions? No? I would.
Quick enough, how do you price it?
That was going to be the other. I thought I had a spare minute actually, and I was going to add that in. It's a monthly fee per recruiter in the organization. Yeah.
It's a per seat fee. Behind having a platform that can post content like a HubSpot, and I had decided if you said HubSpot for hiring, I was definitely not going to give you any shares, but I'll forgive you that one. If it's going to be, there's a lot of content creation needed and hand-holding from organisations who aren't necessarily very good at that. Are you in danger of becoming a content creation and consultancy business that has a bit of technology rather than a technology business that enables
Well,
content?
again, I suppose the analogy back to that would be HubSpot. They're not a content creation company, but they've given a good framework to get the content that you have and make the absolute best use of it. So that's where we would see ourselves fit.
That's good.
Anyone else?
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Hand for Clinch and handful for all of our finalists. I think that it was apropos that the worst career site that he could find was actually Oracle, who's also the largest HCM provider in the world, which is to say, obviously change is coming, and I think it looks really exciting. So with that, I would encourage everyone in the audience to go to the Bizbo app and participate in the poll and choose who you would be the most likely to buy or invest in. Judges, you have 150,000 shares to allocate. Please do not invest them equally, and we'll see who comes up with the highest valuation. Stay tuned. Want to go through and have each of the judges. We'll start with Michael. Just kind of give some insight and thoughts into why you voted the way you did. Yes.
Oh, okay. So I inherently, I dug into the real value proposition and differentiation, and to me, that was a critical success factor for everyone. And I just found that a lot of the presentations are so linear as to lead us to believe you are the only product that does this, which is great because you're confident, but it's also kind of naive because you could have an educated buyer, an educated investor who actually understands the space. So just to hint at the fact that other people do this and they potentially do it well, and here's why we think we do it equally or better, right away tells me, okay, they really understand the landscape. But just not to even really discuss at all, kind of complete void of a competitive landscape was kind of just weird to me, to be honest. So I allocated shares with that in mind, the people that I kind of maybe touched upon it the most. The other one is just from purely, you know, the point here was like we're supposed to be investors. So I kind of have to ask myself, well, how do I make money on this deal? You may have a really great product, but there's just no exit. And, you know, I don't want an asset for 20 years. I kind of want to get in and know when I get out. I mean, you know, it's kind of capitalism. That's how venture capital works. So I think the other portion of my allocation of shares went to the likelihood of a liquidity event. Not whether I'm going to be rich or not, but how likely is it that you're actually going to exit and not just continue to need to raise capital to survive. Okay. So that's kind of how I allocated my shares.
Mir?
Yeah, and to kind of just piggyback on that, because a lot of the methodology is similar as far as understanding what the long-term value is. But for me, it was also not just which one is the best of these, but which one actually is doing something different and unique. That because you're all doing something that's a little different than what others are doing, but some of you are doing some things that are actually just new to the marketplace, not just variants of things that already exist. So for me, it was really around that disruption and, you know, what is true innovation versus what's just another iteration of the same thing that's already been out there.
I think mine is more of a combination of both. I had a 5-point scale for everything. And so industry value, and that would be based on how it impacts the industry as a whole. Market value is what the company has the ability to deliver to the overall market. Acquisition strategy, meaning not if they're going to acquire somebody, but when will they be acquired so I get my money back? Because that's pretty much the only exit strategy outside of closing your doors in our industry. Those are what exist. Competitive landscape, really, not just what was said, but really what else exists out there. And then the last category, is it a game changer? So 10-point scale, plus or minus, and then the scores told me where to invest.
I have 5 things that I look at, which is exactly the same. I work with VC funds on investment quite a lot and advise what works. And the first question, which was worth half of my marks, is would I use it if I was a recruiter? Dead simple. Would I actually use this product or not? Because it's not a product I would use and pay for. It's not something I'd be comfortable investing any cash in if I really had any, which I don't, by the way. So, fantasy. It's Bill if you want money. The other thing is, first of all, market. What market I think you've got, whether you're global or you're purely looking at a US market. And if you are global, are you taking into consideration things like languages, whether you translate, whether you're just a Google Translate product, or whether you really are going to work around the nuances, especially when you get in Europe and you start thinking about places like Germany where you have to do interesting things with data. So that's an important factor to me. The second thing is scale for you. Have you got scale where you really are you more of a feature than a product? And do I think you've got real scale across the marketplace and other applications? The third thing is execution from what you're telling me. Do I think you're actually going to deliver the future bits that you're applying into your presentation? Because that's important to me and how much you've thought about that. And the other thing, which I think has a major factor, is the person presenting and whether I think I want to give them some money or not. Or whether I think they should have some money or not. And it realistically, like any business, that quite often comes as the end factor, is am I confident in you to actually deliver what you're telling me about? I actually thought they were great presentations, though, so I'd just say if we give everyone a quick round of applause for that, because I thought you did a great job. And I know it's difficult to stand up and do it. So
I agree, though they were all really, really strong presentations.
I'll just add a couple. I think I agree with all the comments. You know, I've been investing in this space for about 20 years, and I get grouchy in this space when I see business models are too wide or people claiming they're big and wide. I'd rather focus on narrow and what do you do best? I mean, like, what are you the best at, and what's the secret sauce in the business model? So I think it was hard for me to evaluate these companies, frankly, without most of the CEOs in the room, because it really does come all down to the team. And I know there's a lot of emphasis on the product side today, but I wouldn't make any real dollar bets without knowing the team in a much bigger way. So I would, in general, say focus on the team because that's what you're betting on, but then tight focus. I want to know why you're going to win with the product, what you're the best at. And as a result, I only allocated any dollars or shares or whatever to 3 companies. I was very focused in my in who I would give any money to at all.
And interestingly, your comment about CEO presence actually is reflected in these results, so lesson learned. So this is very interesting. We have a 3-way tie for 6th, 5th, and 4th, respectively, with 60,000 shares each. Jibe, Clinch, and Talent Objects. Let's give them a round of applause. In 3rd place, and the winner of the audience vote, with 160,000 shares, we have Greenhouse.io. Okay. Right. So runners up, silver medalists with 180,000 shares, skill survey. Which means that I am pleased to announce that the winner of the 2015 North American iTalent competition with 215,000 shares is Universum. So, please come up here, say 5 words, and we'll let you get on your merry way. But thank you to everyone who participated. That was awesome. And if all finalists and winners can please meet us in the back directly when this is over. Drop the mic.
Cool. I'd like to thank the Academy. No, everyone, thank you for voting. Thank you for listening. Judges, thank you for spending your time. I know you're very busy. And I thought all of the presenters today had really cool stuff. And I'm really excited for Universum. You know, the volume of activity that we have and the data is just really cool. There are differences between social media platforms, and it is meaningful. So thank you.
All right, folks. So we've had 2 days of almost nonstop content, nonstop marketing, and some really bad dancing last night. I was talking about myself. Anyway, I hope you all enjoyed the 2015 HRO Today Forum. Now, if you voted, you went into the Bizbo system, and our guys were going to use a random number generator to pick where you fell on that list to give a prize. So can someone come up and tell me who our winners are? Because you do get a benefit for staying through the whole thing. And the opportunity to see Bill Borman walking brand. All right. The winner of the, we have the GoPro camera and the Fitbit. So the winner of the GoPro camera is Rich Celia. Where is Rich? I can't see the lights. There you are, man. Good thing you got that thing packed up in time, right? So it's at the back for you. And the winner of the Fitbit is Jane Yeager. Where is Jane Yeager? There you go. You want yourself a Fitbit. All right. Thank you so much. This is a wrap. We're done. Safe travels home. See you here next year at the HRO Today Forum 2016. Thank you.